The federal government of Nigeria has been tasked to leverage on the huge human resources available to the country, with a large population of Nigerians being youths. This was during a National Leadership and Development Conference organized by International Alert in collaboration with the Africa Youth Growth Foundation and the International Organization for Migration, held in Abuja. The conference provided an opportunity for stakeholders to brainstorm on the challenges facing the youth population in the country, understand the reasons for large-scale migration, and provide workable solutions that will impact the nation positively. Participants at the event say carrying the youth population along in national policy and programs formulation and implementation is a viable way of ensuring youth are contributing to national development and are discouraged from seeking pastures new.
If you look at the history of the country, there's been quite a lot of interest around youth involvement. But I think this will continue to remain a dream if we don't take actionable steps for how we take this forward. And so we come here with an open mind. We didn't come here with any set agenda for what we want to come out of this conversation. We have deliberately and carefully selected the delegates in this event. These are youth leaders doing very well in their chosen fields of endeavor. So we want to hear from them what those policy constraints are that will not enable them to reach their potential, and what they think about being involved in decision-making processes. Again, we have very senior government officials from different ministries, departments, and agencies in the room. Those ones will tell us what opportunities exist for young people to engage. So this is a sort of two-way conversation where we as third parties stand in the middle to see how we can bridge the gap, ensure that the policymakers very well let the youths know what the entry points are, and the youths are able to talk about what policy gaps or what policy constraints would not enable them to reach their potential. I have been interacting with a couple of them, and I'd like to share a very short story of one of the youths whom I have mentored for a very long time, right there in the room. He set up a very large agricultural enterprise, poultry. He also rears grass cutters and a couple of livestock. And because of the border issues, the opening of the borders, there's been massive influx of this chicken that is imported chicken. So there's been massive influx of imported chicken that has now had a substantial negative effect on his business. And he just told me that he's closing it in the next couple of weeks because it's no longer making profit. Food vendors now prefer to use the imported chicken as against the live chicken that is being reared because it's cheaper. So these are the sort of macroeconomic policies that can affect the way in which youths do well in their chosen endeavor. If you look at governance as well, youths have demonstrated, very substantial involvement in the last elections. And how can we galvanize, continue to mobilize the youths to make sure that the aspirations that they have, as well as the manifestos that political decision makers have put forward, are realized?
The youth policy is a contribution of so many stakeholders, so many ministries. Contribution from Minister of Sports, Minister of Health, Minister of Education, Science and Technology. And in these ministries, agri and what have you, they have interventions that has to do with youth. For instance, if by the year 2023, because of the unemployment nature in the country, that about 5,000 youths are to undergo training on fisheries, that is the Ministry of Agri, or on poultry, that is the Ministry of Agri. What we do, we make sure that we work in collaboration with them. The ministries of Agri will organize programs like that, by training our young people on how to go about doing the fishery or how to go about doing the poultry. Ours is like, we don't supervise, but we work hand in hand with them. So that by the end of the day, the policy, that is how we are tracking the achievement. We are tracking how the policy goes, how the intervention of these ministries come to bear. Another thing is for the youth themselves to know that they cannot be used as agent of destruction. They have to look inward, they have to think, they have to take that their position as leaders they have entrepreneurial skills. They have a lot of skills, Instead of involving or engaging in drug addict political surgery, let them come and be good to themselves. They can be employers of labor by using their skills.
If we have good governance, a lot of people will not have the need to leave the country. If we have good governance, public health infrastructures will be well maintained, and of course people will not even have the need to leave the country on medical tourism. If we have good governance, our educational institutions and infrastructures will be well, maintained, provided for, and people will not necessarily have to leave the country in search of better education. If we have good governance, we will not have, a lot of poor people, particularly young people who are poor, who are unemployed on the street and taken to crimes and criminalities. So a lot, is dependent on good governance, and that is why we are using today to actually call on those in government to have the need to partner with young people. We're not asking for them to include young people. There's a difference. Partnership is what we are calling for, because young people constitute about 70% of the population of this country. And if that is the case, in business, you look at stakeholding. If somebody has 70% stake, that person is more or less the owner of the business. And so the young people of this country are the owners of business of governance in this country. But the opposite is the case as we speak, because you can count the number of young people who are truly in government, determining the decision and the outcome of the decisions that actually take place in government. And that is a contradiction we want to actually discourage, that henceforth, government should actually partner with young people to determine their destiny and to determine what happens, to their future. Because at the end of the day, they have the greatest stake.
We have a national youth policy that clearly spells out the potentials of the youth population. And the point we are making here is that they have struggled since independence to locate themselves within important structures for decision making, where they can contribute to decisions that affect their present and their future. And the only way this can happen, among other things, including economic empowerment, is that they seek, in the context of democracy, they seek elective offices into the executive, into parliament, and into political parties, particularly because political parties are gatekeepers in the electoral process. If they do this, then they will be able to redefine the policy space and give priority to those things that will enable the youth to take their rightful place.
I think it's just to, do I put it as decentralize certain things so that youth can have their freedom to do certain things, because the amount of protocol young people would have to go through to achieve certain things is so long that sometimes you get lethargic at some point and you just move. So it's to just make things easy, also to demystify the policies, because another problem I find particularly is that some policies are very, very encrypted to the point where you cannot even make sense out of it, not to talk of even working on it. So I think making the policies much more easier to understand, which is particularly, I think, a function of the function of legislators. Then you talk about the other one I spoke about. So I think that there's just so much government can do, just make things easier economically, politically, and otherwise, so that young people can feel free to go into it, because it's not a very easy space to step into. So whichever way government can actually help, aside from these other ways, I think they are very, very imperative.